Right, well, what's going on? What are we talking about, Emma?
Today we're talking about our birth story, or induction and then eventual C-section.
This episode is called Childbirth. Hi, fellow parents, mums or dads. Welcome back to the Crippen household.
Whoop, whoop.
Here in Harrogate. Lily, our 2-year-old daughter, is occupied downstairs with Grandad today.
Yeah.
And so come and relax with us as we chat about our stories, challenges. This is a podcast for parents, by parents. And pull up a beanbag in this room of requirement and join me, Elliot, co-host number 1, with Emma.
Co-host number 2.
Oh, I thought you were going to query that. I thought you were going to push back.
Well, I wanted to, but I accepted it. That's what marriage is about. You make sacrifices for each other. And I accepted I'd be number 2.
What makes this Podcraft special? Well, we do an art or craft each episode on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's one of the strange things we do. We're also a husband and wife duo, and we're quite different from each other, have different perspectives, have different upbringings, and we also think we're kind of quite funny, I suppose.
Yeah. People say I'm funny, but I don't know. It's not always intentionally so. I don't know if it's my clumsy,
Listen along if you want to laugh at us.
Yeah. It's the problem. They can't see how clumsy I am.
If you're new here, then I'm Elliot, and fun fact time, I'm the one who thinks this is a comedy podcast. What do you think this is, Emma?
Yeah, I always try and get us away from the comedy, really. I always think it's more of a sit-down kind of chit-chat podcast.
Yeah, like a mum's kind of conversation in a coffee shop type
I
thing.
don't think it's a mum's conversation because you're not a mum, but...
No, but like
like
just how you're approaching the
Yeah,
kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if it was a dad's conversation, we'd just sit around and probably wouldn't chat.
Mm. Or they'd wait for me to ask them a question and then chat. That's what tends to happen when I'm around a load of dads. And then they're really keen to talk.
Well, that's us. If you don't understand what's going on, then go back and listen to all the other episodes.
Yeah.
Or stick around and listen to some stuff here. Parenting achievement time.
Ding, 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 ding.
Parenting achievement unlocked. It's unlocked. Parenting achievement unlocked.
I like he's given up. Sometimes he
Bing,
has his
bing,
phone
bing.
making a noise, and
Ding,
clearly
ding, ding.
this week he's like, not doing it.
It just goes downhill. It's
What I
nothing.
have to live with. You hear that? That's what I put up with every day.
Parenting achievement time.
Parenting achievement time.
Is this? That's what it is.
It is. Do you have a parenting achievement you'd like to share?
Ba-ding!
God, it's gonna be like this today. Do you have a parenting achievement?
I thought we could talk about how our house is always a tip.
Oh yeah.
I feel like the last few episodes we've been kind of getting at each other with the various achievements we've been sharing, purposely being like, go on, you share a thing where you did something bad. And it's like
true.
next time it's like, I'm going to share a story where you come off in a bad light.
It's true. It's true.
So I thought we'd try and go for one that's kind of
Everybody's fault.
everyone's fault or no one's fault, or
Yeah.
just a kind of relatable thing as a parent. Is your house a tip?
Every night time, our house, because that's when somebody cleans while the other person does bedtime, our house becomes clean. And then somehow, like, within 5 minutes of waking up in the morning, because Elliot normally does morning, I come downstairs and I'm like, what happened? Like,
A bomb's gone off.
it was
Stuff
clean
everywhere.
last night when we went to bed, and I've come down and it's all a mess again.
Yeah. It does, well, I mean, we do clean every night, but equally, it's still not as much as like pre-children.
Oh, yeah.
when-
But also, there wasn't as much mess pre-children.
Yeah. Ever since having a baby.
As
And then,
in, you could hoover and stuff more because you didn't have to tidy up all the junk. Whereas I feel like now you have to tidy up all the junk, you're not as incentivized to do the other bits.
yeah.
Because that's like lower down on the priority scale.
We thought we'd share a funny story of recently I got in a kind of a particularly cleany mood one
Yeah.
evening.
Went mad.
Came to regret it, but then it was good afterwards. I was like,
Oh,
I'm going to
yeah.
clean under the sofa
Under the sofa. You can get every item out
Yeah.
and check if it should be under the
because
sofa.
it was a tip under there. It was just
was.
stuff shoved under there,
Yeah.
things Lily had hidden under there. Goodness
And I
me.
think it had just been was it after Christmas when we'd other people? So like we had board games we just kept shoving under there that we were going to sort out
We'd
later.
not properly put stuff away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so amongst all this discovery, afterwards I called up to Emma and I was like, come see what I found.
Yes, there's a lovely thing. I don't know why he had to share this.
I wanted to share the parenting achievement with you. I found a bottle under there, like a toddler bottle that had once contained chocolate milk.
Yeah.
It had been under there so long that what was left in the bottle, and it was full, was solid.
Yeah.
Like a solid
Can you imagine
brown...
my face when he said, come look at this? I was like, why have you shown me that? Disgusting.
I was like, I was going, I was looking for this bottle. I'd wondered where it had gone.
When we saw it, I had wondered. But the thing is, you always go, I bet we've put it in a bag, like ready to go out
This
somewhere.
feels like a whole other parenting achievement.
does,
but the amount of things we lose that just, I'm like, where on earth did that go?
What happened to it?
It just turns up months later.
Yeah. Or we never find it.
Yeah.
And it's just a mystery.
Yeah.
That's rather a long achievement. But yeah.
Do you have a similar experience or parenting achievement?
When you always say this, you look at me and I feel like I'm under pressure to reply.
Oh. Okay, I didn't mean to. I was just, we're having a chit chat. I look at you when I chit chatting.
I know you're asking the audience, but I always feel like being like, we've just discussed.
Do you, Emma? Do you have a parenting story that you want to share?
It's similar, and I want to be like, yeah, it's the same as yours.
Well, just to clarify then, you, the listener, those people listening to us, you can hear me in your little ears. If you have a story, an achievement, something that's a relatable experience as a parent, have you found an old bottle full of old congealed chocolate milk under your sofa? Let us know. Get in touch. Tell us.
Or something more gross.
Yeah. Or what's the grossest thing you found whilst cleaning your house? Yeah.
I bet teenagers have some gross.
Oh yeah,
like
probably.
gone off cereal or something.
Maybe.
I bet the older kids have some interesting.
And then also stick around till the end of the episode and we'll share some of the things that have been sent in to us. Well, and that's over. So power through that illness your child has given you and let's jump into the delightful topic of childbirth. It's gonna be a hoot.
Yeah.
So this episode leads on quite nicely from kind of where we left off with our pregnancy episode.
Yeah.
So if you haven't listened to that, you don't have to. It's not necessary, but you can follow the journey chronologically.
Chronologically.
Yeah, that's the word. If you go back, I think that was the first episode we did of this season 2.
Yes.
We should probably preface this with maybe a couple of things. Lily was our first child, and this, is...
It's our first birth.
Yeah, we didn't really know what to expect or what was happening. And I'm sure a lot of this will be familiar or similar to some people and not others. As with everything, it's just kind of the experience we had. Did we want to say anything about the NHS?
Oh, so I was just thinking that. We should probably clarify the NHS doesn't come off particularly well in this story. And we're not saying we're anti the NHS or anything like that. And, I know the staff work very hard. This is just our perspective of what happened. And
yeah.
And I'll be honest, the NHS isn't in a good place right now. And I think it's okay to say that.
It's no one's fault. Well, I mean,
it is someone's
the government's fault, maybe. But aside from politics, it's not individual people's fault.
No. Because I know a lot of people find it very almost triggering when you kind of do criticisms, and I want to be like, I'm not saying it's not a good thing.
Maybe you, having just said that as well, maybe also if you've not given birth yet and for some bizarre reason listening to this whilst you're pregnant
maybe miss
or
this
expecting your first
afterwards.
Yeah, like we didn't have a great time, so
but other people will have had better times.
Yeah.
Basically, we like the NHS. We just think they're underfunded and overworked, so it doesn't always work as a good system should. And if you are going to give birth, don't listen to this because it was quite a traumatic story.
Also, I suppose a lot of mums like to chat about birth stories.
Yeah.
It's why we're kind of doing this episode. Often when you meet a new friend or whatever, somehow you always end up talking about how you ended up giving birth.
We bond over a lot of trauma, I think, a lot of us.
Yeah. I was half tempted to do this episode with another mum so that you and another mum could chat about it. But I think part of, our podcasting... niche-y thing.
Yeah.
What we're going for is that like we go into everything as a partnership and a team, and so even though most of this story is about you, I will be here chipping in, telling my side of the story.
And also, near the end of the birth, I'll be honest, I can't remember an awful lot. As you know, I was like, had a lot of drugs in my system and was very tired.
Yeah.
Like near the end of birth, I really can't remember much. So, and you were actually there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know if I could do the story without your help anyway.
That's true. Yeah. But I just want to say, I'm not trying to take away from the woman's perspective. I'm not, minimizing what they go through. But I'm just here to give the kind of dad's perspective on what the whole thing's like. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fine.
You're stuck with me, I'm afraid. So the week leading up to us finally giving birth, there was all sorts of things going on.
Yeah.
You were huge
I was
in that last
huge.
bit of your pregnancy. We couldn't wait to give birth.
We
were sick of it by then.
Lily... I'm not one of those women who enjoyed pregnancy, but I wouldn't say it was that bad till the end.
So you were in and out of hospital with tests and things and going on.
I had various problems.
Yeah.
I had mastitis before I was even breastfeeding. I had one leg that kept swelling up and they didn't know if it was a blood clot or not. It's a separate story, but basically...
We won't go into that now.
They forgot to measure my legs, so they never worked out how big it got bigger or anything.
And then you had your rash.
Then I had my horrendous rash, which...
We've discussed a little bit before, I think, in other episodes. We won't go into massive detail here, because I think...
It might help other people to know that it was PMLE.
Right.
So basically, some people... especially during perimenopause or during a pregnancy, because of a high hormone level, can get an allergy to sunlight.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
So nobody would give me anything for it. And if you Google it, it's the most, it looks like, you look like a leper.
Yeah.
It's the most, because I used to say people, it was a really bad rash, and people would look like, oh, it's not too bad.
And you know how, like, most things with allergies, you, like, just try and avoid the thing that's giving you the allergy?
Yeah.
When you're allergic to sunlight, that's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
So that was a fun going on.
Yeah. Just so everybody pictures how bad normal childbirth is. Just imagine you also have a terrible rash that's terribly itchy and makes you look like you have some terrible
And it's not to say, like, we've had the worst childbirth experience ever, or that I'm sure there's people that have better and worse experiences.
Yeah.
The point of this is not to compare and judge or to, like, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just we like to share stories.
I'm just painting a picture of how miserable I was at the end of my birth, just so you're all with me that I wasn't happy anyway.
I think the main bit of context we need before getting into the hospital is that Lily, our daughter, was very big.
Yes. Very long.
And she was measuring long and big.
Yeah.
And they knew that and we knew that. It's not that, as with, what babies are like, it wasn't that she was physically massive. There's plenty of babies that were bigger than her. But for you were very petite.
I'm very petite. If people don't know, I always say I'm 5'3". I'm just over 5'2". Yeah, I've always been very little. So yes.
So on that charty thing.
The charty thing, always...
It was
always too big.
Pretty big, but it was not big enough on the charty thing for them to do anything about it.
No, but they did. I remember they had agreed because they were worried about her growing too big, and that they would induce me. Well, it was before the due date, but I can't remember how far before.
I think it was a couple of days.
A couple of days before the due date.
We were certain we'd give birth before then, but
because all my sisters had.
Because Lily was measuring big, they were like, "We'll set a date that if you don't go into labour naturally by then, we'll induce you."
Which, honestly, I was quite happy about because I was sick of being pregnant.
Yeah. And just at this point, I'd like to say, way before the birth started, we kind of flagged to them and said, what happens if the baby is, like, really big? Emma's quite little.
Yeah.
It's measuring big already.
Yeah.
You've set a date to be induced, but... surely can we talk about, like, C-sections and, it seems like it might not be possible to give birth. I'd just like you to hold that in your mind for the end of this story. And the NHS staff there kind of just dismissed that and were like,
do you want the quote that they gave that I got really annoyed at? Nature doesn't give you something you can't handle. That nature doesn't, apparently.
Yeah, well, we weren't a fan of that midwife. Sorry.
I was furious. Furious.
Yeah, so they wouldn't discuss doing anything preemptively.
Which is fair enough. Like, you hope for the best.
And they really do like to push that everyone tries
birth,
to give birth naturally initially. I kind of
get into it. Boy, did I try to give birth naturally.
So we got to that few days before your due date.
Yeah.
When you were due to be induced.
Yeah.
And then we got a phone call on that day to be like, we're too busy.
Well, yeah, it's full. We're full. you can't be induced today. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And I was like, so I said to them, will I be induced tomorrow? We don't know. We might be too full. And I was trying to be like, I get people like emergencies are coming in. I get that people are suddenly giving birth, but I would like a date, ideally.
This is one of those things where it's useful to the context of it being our first child is helpful, because I think going into it again, we would understand more of how this process works. We really had no idea about what induction meant or entailed. Or
I'd like looked up the leaflet they'd given me and how, you know.
Yeah, but we thought when they gave you a date, that was it. That
You'd
would
go
be
in
like
on that date.
an appointment.
Yeah.
You just go in.
And I remember what really annoyed me is they were like, oh, we'll call you at 10 o'clock tomorrow. And if you don't get a call, you're not coming in. And I remember being like, so I have to wait for a phone call for you to tell me if I'm coming or not. But if I don't get one, I just assume I'm not coming in, which just...
It messed with our mental health, didn't it, at that point? We were like on the edge as it was.
Especially because I was like ready the day that they'd said to be like, okay, today we're going to give birth. Or, you know, which once again was short-sighted because, of course, you don't give birth on the day you're induced. That's silly.
Well, I'm sure someone might.
Well, yeah, according to some of our listeners, I was going to say readers, they ain't readers. People do. But I was like, oh, yeah, so we'll give birth tomorrow.
I think maybe 3 days passed. Each day they said they couldn't do it. And then...
They gave me a test for something, like just...
Oh, that was it. Well remembered.
And the test had come back abnormal.
Was it your blood pressure or something?
Yes, which for the whole time... And it's probably the stress of, honestly, waiting for this induction.
So they were worried that test had come back
high.
And so then you got bumped up the priority list.
Also, they found protein in my wee, but I'm sure then they tested me again and there was nothing wrong and I had low blood pressure. So who knows?
Who knows?
I don't know if somebody just felt really guilty for me and just fudged the test.
So then suddenly it was like, come in at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate that our hospital where we live is literally just up the road.
Oh, yeah.
And we could walk to it.
That was a real blessing because we
really
didn't have to pack a car and we didn't have to pay. It's ridiculous what you pay for parking at hospitals.
Or just all sorts of things. Yeah. One of the things I've looked up is I've gone back and I've searched out all the messages I sent people. So my primary purpose during this whole story was kind of like chief communicator.
Yes, head communicator
with
to
the
tell the rest
world.
of the family what was going on. I think because it was still quite COVID-y times as well. It was people really wanted to feel connected to what was going on.
Well, that was the other thing, wasn't it? It was during the end of COVID, and we've again done a previous episode about that, so you can listen to that if you want to hear more of that context.
Test before I went in.
And we've mentioned before, but it was bizarre how you were tested and I wasn't.
Yeah.
Yet I was there for the whole time you were there with the same people.
Yeah, in the same room. Yeah.
And we'll get onto it later, but yeah, we had to wear like masks the entire time.
Yeah.
And things like that. But the family and whatever, everyone was wanting to know what was happening. And so you had your phone with you, but of course were very...
I was distracted.
distracted. So
This is another thing that was a misconception. Because online, everybody's like, oh, make a calming playlist to help you give birth. And like, take a book with you.
Well, I think the thing here is we'd tried to research as much as possible. But what we'd looked up was about natural births. And so we were then completely thrown when we had an induction because it was just a completely different process.
Also, though, I think some people's inductions don't work for quite a while.
Okay.
Whereas ours worked very fast.
So we were kind of prepared for...
like a very long wait.
Sitting around.
And sometimes they don't work and they've got to do it again.
Yeah.
So we were kind of prepared for a slow kind of... not gentle, but almost leisurely time to start off with.
Anyway, so the first message that I sent was a picture of you sat in your bed as we just got in. So 8:22 on the 7th of June. And you'd got induced and we were just waiting then. But then let's have a look. The next message I sent, this is rather amusing, is I've told the family that they're a bit nicer to me this time round than my trips downstairs in the antenatal bit.
I will say, on the labour ward, most of the nurses were far more on it. And a lot more personable, actually.
I think it was like all the people dealing with pregnant women weren't used to having men there for some reason. Whereas
I don't know if they were just overworked as well, to be honest, and they just didn't have time for you.
Whereas I think they were used to husbands being around or partners being there.
And looking worried,
so they were kind of a bit better. Anyway, that's just rather amusing. Apparently, then 11:30, so quite a number of hours later, we went for a little walk around the hospital.
I remember the walk.
Yeah.
In that I was
Because we were just waiting.
Yeah, this is quite nice.
Mm.
And I was really surprised they let me go for a walk.
Mm.
I think because I was like, it's really stuffy in here. Because, got to share a room with other people. I didn't want to really be sat with other people. I wanted to go for a walk. And they actually let us go for a little walk to the hospital garden. Honestly, that was the nicest bit of my birth bit. I enjoyed that.
That's because nothing was happening.
Yeah, it was great.
We were just waiting. And looking back, it feels like it wasn't actually that long. But going through it at the time, when you're talking about hours sat around, you noticed every minute and every hour a lot more in real time. So then by midday or so, you'd actually started having contractions, I think. So not long at all, really.
It felt it was pretty quick for us. They were quite pleased. But they were, like, painful. And they weren't... A lot of people, I think, with natural births are quite slow. Like, as in they kind of build up contraction-wise. Whereas mine weren't. There wasn't much time between them. And they were very severe.
Yeah.
I remember, like, trying to walk to the toilet. And I was having to hold on to the wall as I was, like, walking. And I'd have to stop every now and again when I had a contraction. And then be like, okay, right, I can walk again. Yeah.
Like I'd seen in like TV shows and stuff, women who like have those early contractions in labour, like they don't look that painful.
No, I mean, they are acting. But I know some people don't find them that painful early on.
So what I mean, my preconception was that it kind of started off easier and slowly got more and more painful and more difficult. Whereas that first bit, I would always say is like the worst bit of our whole thing in terms of pain for you.
Yeah.
And it was horrible for me seeing you go through that pain.
And we had like a TENS machine.
Yeah,
which
so that was
actually,
the next bit.
I will say I found pretty useful. Didn't stop the pain, but did distract you, which I think at that time was the most I could hope for. And I quite liked the TENS machine.
I'd never heard of one before. And found it very bemusing that it just basically gave you like little electric shocks just to distract you from the pain.
This is how painful childbirth is.
Yeah.
The fact you're like, oh, that electric shock is quite nice. Quite a nice distraction. Yeah. So I quite liked the TENS machine. I thought it was going to be a load of nonsense.
Yeah.
I hadn't even bought one because I thought, what's that going to do? I can actually say, it doesn't make you not feel it, but it did help a lot, actually. Quite liked my TENS machine.
So yeah, there was a horrible time really, because every like 4 or 5 minutes you were having these really nasty contractions.
That's what I mean. Not a big space between them.
Yeah. And this went on from like midday when you started through till about 6 p.m. So about 6 hours.
6 hours, yeah.
We were sat there. And the bit that was really kind of awkward is we were still in that room where you first came in to get induced. So it was like a room with 4 beds, I think.
Yeah.
And there were
which turns out one of the nicer rooms to be in. Didn't appreciate it when I first went in there.
We didn't. And there were a couple of other people who were being induced as well.
I remember I heard one of them complaining because nothing had happened. And I remember thinking like, God, I wish nothing had happened.
But also, I was slightly worried that we were putting off these other 2 women because you were sat in your bed like moaning away with the pain and they were just sat there like waiting for something to happen.
And I remember just kept telling him, I kept being like, I'm in so much pain I can't even cry. Like, I really want to cry.
You couldn't talk to me.
But I can't.
You were just like, you couldn't communicate.
And I just moved my hand when I wanted him to put the TENS machine up to the fullest.
Get a little signal.
And then I go like this when to put it down.
Because I couldn't always tell when the contractions were going to start or stop.
Yeah.
And I was thinking at this point, goodness me, if this is how it begins.
Yeah. I thought it would only get worse.
Yeah.
And also I was really worried because I'm quite good with pain. So I was like, God, I'm struggling now. It's going to be impossible.
At 9 o'clock at night that day, I messaged the family saying that we'd been moved to the delivery suite because you were 4 centimetres dilated.
And I thought I was going to be wheeled. I had to walk to my delivery suite.
Yeah.
And it was agony.
Yeah.
I had to stop every 5 minutes.
Well, no, but at that point it was like every couple of minutes.
Yeah, well, it's terrible. I was walking there like a poor little creature, kind of holding on to walls, clinging on to you.
Yeah.
Trying to walk. I remember thinking, oh, it's good, they'll get me a little chair to sit in. And I was like, oh no, I've got to walk. Which I know at the time doesn't seem like a big deal,
Yeah.
but at the time I thought, well, that'll be some relief because I don't have to think about walking. And
We
then
were excited to get the private
we
room,
were-
though,
we
ready
were
for
excited.
delivering. We were very naive, though. At least
Yeah.
I was. At that point, I was like, great, we're in the delivery
Yeah, I
room.
thought it can't be that long.
Going to be quick now. I remember messaging and telling everyone, like, oh, I think she'll be here before midnight. It can't, we must be
Yeah.
close.
Well, I kept thinking it must be 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing this for a while now.
And to be fair, we know some people do have
Yeah.
quick births. It can happen. The big excitement, though, for getting across into the delivery suite, though, was then they were like, what pain relief would you like?
Oh, yeah. And I remember I should have stuck to my guns at this point,
Should've
but I
done.
didn't. What even is it called anymore?
Epidural?
Epidural. I was like, I would really like an epidural. And they go, but you've coped really well with the TENS machine. Do you want to keep with that? And I was like, no, I do not want to stay with the TENS machine. As much as it has helped me, I remember in my head thinking, well, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah. So effectively, this lovely lady, she talked us out of getting an epidural.
Yeah, which is fair enough because I know some people, they struggle to push and stuff because they can't feel everything and,
Yeah.
blah-de-blah-de-blah. But in hindsight, I should have just had the epidural then.
Should have done. Really should have done.
But anyway, so that was like, gas and air?
Yeah.
Have some of that?
Like we know what that is. We know
Yeah.
we've heard a lot of people that have had it. We've
and-
heard that it's good.
Yeah, I'd had it before, because, in my life I've had other health problems and I remember quite enjoying it. So
Yeah.
I was like, have some of that.
And that did seem to help quite a
Yeah,
lot.
once again, doesn't get rid of the pain, but just makes you on another level where you're kind of high and don't really care about the pain. So yeah, liked gas and air. At this point, I was being a champ, can I just say?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to bounce on the ball as much as I can because that's going to help speed labour along.
Emma, if you know Emma at all, she's a very determined character. When she has a focus in her mind, she's like, "This is it. I'm going for this.
Yeah.
You cannot distract me." So she got into this state where she's like, "I'm going to get this baby out.
I'm going to get this baby
I'm
out
gonna
of
get
me."
this baby." So she was bouncing on this ball.
Then I was doing squats.
Yeah,
because they
doing-
suggest you do squats.
doing your breathing aggressively
Yeah.
to be like, "I'm going to
Yeah.
get this."
walking up
Yeah.
and down, because I knew the worst thing to do was sit down. So I was like, right, I'm going to be active. I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to get this baby out of me. I'm sick. Already at this point, I'm sick of giving birth. So I remember I was bouncing on the ball as much as possible. And all the midwives were going, you're doing great. It's so you're so good. You're still being active. You're doing everything you're meant to be doing. And I was, like I said, I was determined. I was like, I'm having this baby out tonight. I'm sick of this. And then my water broke because I was really excited. I thought and it was dramatic, like the films.
Yeah.
Not just a little bit. And then they were like, oh, that's only your first water. It turns out your other one hasn't broken yet. Which was surprising with the amount of water that came out of me.
Yeah. I mean, Emma was doing all this, and I was getting slightly worried because it was beginning to dawn on me as the hours ticked past that this could be a long process.
Yeah.
And Emma was exerting a lot of energy,
energy.
doing this walking and bouncing and
Yeah.
whatnot. And I was like, you might need to take it a little steady, keep some energy back to whatever. And yeah, and then like you say, around midnight or so. So we'd been in for a few hours. Your waters broke, and we were like, "Great, that's
a good sign.
Progress, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, surely that means something's happening." So the next message I've got on my thing to the family was at 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I've said Emma's still braving on, doing everything.
I forget how long I was committed to just giving birth. Committed to doing everything possible.
Yeah. And I've put, I'm barely staying awake, but she's doing great. They're going to check dilation in half an hour. Hopefully we're nearly there. Fingers crossed. That night I really struggled with, it seems crazy looking back because we've had so many sleepless nights since then. But back then, pre-children, childless me, I was not good at staying up all night.
Also, you didn't really have much, as in I had this thing inside me where I was like, I'm going to get this baby out of me. Hell or high water. I want it out.
Yeah.
So this whole time I was like, well, I'm going to keep bouncing on the ball and I'm going to keep doing these squats and I'm just going to keep doing what they suggest you do till the baby comes out. Whereas I think Elliot was like, well, I can't run up and down the room with you. And you just kept telling me I was doing a good job.
Yeah.
There's not much of I know some people like massages. I didn't really want anyone to touch me, I'll be frank. Not in a mean way, but you have a lot of people touching you all the time to check you dilated.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like I've had enough people touching me to have... I'm not the kind of person who wants him patting me or anything. I didn't want that at that point. So I
Yeah.
felt like you were tired because you were just like,
That's just,
just got to sit and wait and worry about
just
you.
doing the best I can to support you, but there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
Just keep chatting to you and just be there. 4:43 in the morning, you had another check, and they basically said, well, since we last checked at 1 a.m, so 3 hours
Yeah.
later, you've not dilated anymore at all.
No.
And so we were just like, what?
What?
We've been doing all
I've
this.
been doing all this to have no progress.
It's just like, oh dear.
Yeah.
Like both a bit of our wits' end then,
Yeah.
I think, because we were like, how do we keep going? This is
like nothing seems to be happening.
yeah. So at that point we were like, let's go for the epidural.
Yeah.
And
I've had enough.
Yeah.
At this point.
because we were like,
How many long I've been bouncing on my ball? 5 hours or something.
yeah,
I was like, that's it. Epidural.
yeah,
And they agreed, actually. At this point, they were quite good because they were like, it's maybe best just to, sit and have an epidural, which is really difficult because you have to tell them when to put it in your spine.
Mm.
I had to tell them when I wasn't having a contraction because I wasn't allowed to move.
Oh yeah.
And once again, my contractions were still really close together. So I remember the man was really sweet. Elliot's not good with needles.
No,
So you weren't looking.
I bizarrely, and this is gonna sound crazy, the thing that I struggled with most through the whole thing, the idea of them putting a needle in your spine.
Yeah.
I went really faint, and
Yeah.
I was like, this is crazy. I cannot pass out here. When Emma's gone through all this, she's put up with this. She's the one
She's the
dealing
one
with
getting
it.
the injection.
I've done nothing other than just stay up for a night. I cannot possibly faint from the thought of a needle. And I was like,
He's like, I'll lose all credibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just felt like I had a lot of responsibility. So I basically, at the end of my last transaction, I was just going, go, 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 go. For the man to just put it in your spine. That all was well. He was very good at his job. It
yeah,
was fine.
we had a lovely little man called Mohammed.
Yeah, we really liked him. I wish he'd stayed. He was nice. He gave me the drugs I wanted.
You took very well to the epidural.
Oh, yeah.
It worked pretty much perfectly.
Yes. The only thing they were worried about is I could still move my feet, which apparently is abnormal. But
you
I couldn't feel anything.
Couldn't feel them.
I couldn't feel my feet. I just couldn't move them. So, but no, I loved my epidural. I would highly recommend one to anybody who has been in a long labour. It was like heaven. And I
So
really wanted to eat, but they didn't have anything. I remember, did they give me some cereal?
Yeah, I think you just
And I
went
don't
with it because they had very little that was gluten-free.
Gluten-free, yeah.
Like the previous day, you'd had jacket potatoes and
Yeah.
things because that's one of the only things on the
Yeah.
hospital menu that was gluten-free. But then we'd been plying ourselves all night with coffee and tea, and you had those energy tablets with you.
Oh, yeah.
Very high on sugar and caffeine.
Yeah. And then I was really hungry.
We needed some food. I remember I had toast or something they brought
Yeah.
us. Because again, it wasn't at a time when they were offering food,
No, it was really early in the morning.
but they recognised that we needed
Yeah.
something to eat. So yeah, I think you had some
I
cereal,
had some cereal with a lot of sugar, I think.
which probably wasn't gluten free, but at that point it was like,
I'd have had anything.
Yeah.
I was starving.
tap tap tap, click the buttons.
Tap, tap, tap. I thought you were going to do a dance.
My name is Pod. My surname is
Cass.
Cass.
How did I guess that was coming?
Do you like my alter ego?
I don't know yet. I haven't decided.
Tap those buttons. Any buttons.
Yeah.
Any buttons will do.
Are you meant to be an old posh English gentleman?
Yes,
Okay.
that is my name is Pod. Posh old English gentleman.
I don't really know if that's what you sound like, but okay. Basically saying subscribe, do whatever you can do.
Share.
Share. Yes,
Share's
very
big
important one.
Big one. Please share.
Thank you, Mr. Pod.
And Mr. Pod is here. Yes.
Share.
Here to remind you to share.
It's like a children's TV show. Share your toys?
No, don't share your toys. Share the podcast. It's named after me, Mr. Pod.
Oh, of course, Mr. Pod.
Where do you think podcast got its name from?
I don't know.
It-
I never
That's
considered
me,
it.
Mr. Pod.
Dear, Mr. Pod's dropping things.
Mr. Pod can also tell you about our sponsor.
Sponsor?
But, well, we don't really have a sponsor.
No.
But we do like to tell you...
Supporter?
about how we are able to do this podcast.
Yeah.
Based on Mr. Pod.
Based on Mr. Pod.
Is because I'm struggling to be serious and be Mr. Pod at the same time. It's because the church has
Not the church.
The church
is a very general statement.
That's true. It's not very specific.
No.
We're Christians, and if you didn't know,
Surprise!
and so the Methodist Church, and particularly the Kairos movement, which is an organisation within Yorkshire North and East Methodist District, which there you go. That's very precise for you.
It is very
Some
precise.
direct information. They support us and enable us to bring you this
Podcraft.
where we do crafting and podding.
And podding.
Podding and crafting. Talk about childbirth.
Yeah.
And all the fun parenting stuff.
All the fun
Kids
parenting stuff.
and toddlers and babies.
And crying.
Yeah. No sleep.
Yeah.
No sleep for the podless. I think that's about it, really.
I think that's it, yeah.
About it. Just to say, share the pod. Share the pod.
Share.
Not that. Don't get confused. That's not me. Not me, Mr. Pod. That's the thing you're listening to in your little ears.
In your little ears.
Take out your little headphones, or whatever. And I don't know why that's necessary, but pick up your little phone, click the little share button, send it to someone, and say, "You go listen to Mr. Pod."
Mr. Pod is great.
Yeah.
I like in your head, you can't listen and click.
No, I'm a man. I can't do two things at once.
I'm just clarifying
It's a limitation of my species.
Species, is it?
Yeah. I'm from the planet cast.
Oh, I see you're Mr. Pod still. I was getting very confused. I was like, don't they say men are from Mars? But no, you're Mr. Pod, I forget.
My surname is named after my planet.
Oh, how interesting.
Not sure how much of this is going to make it into the show. Got a bit doolally here.
Yes,
but
doolally's a lovely word. I love it.
Now I'll send you back to the Emma and Elliot to chat more about
the normal Elliot. Yes.
Yeah, no, not normal. I'm Mr. Pod.
Of course.
I'm sending you back to Elliot and Emma to chat about the hospital story.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Mr. Pod. Goodbye.
The other thing that happened in conjunction with the epidural, you had that drip.
I did have a drip.
That you had two different drips.
Yeah.
One that was like nutrients or whatever. I don't know what
I think they were worried I was going to dehydrate.
The typical drippy thing, whatever they put in you.
Yeah.
But the other one was to like I don't know how you describe it, like move you along with your contractions.
It's like induction again. It's to try and get me to the place I'm meant to be at.
So at that point, once again, we were feeling a bit more positive.
Like, something's happening. I'm on these drips. I'm no longer feeling pain, so I feel a lot better.
It does amuse me again. I'm looking back at my messages. I've said we've had the epidural, and the midwife has told us if there's still no change in 4 hours, then we'll have a C-section. But the midwife is confident Emma can do it. It's just taking longer than expected.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you it took a lot more than 4 hours.
It did, before we got a C-section.
But once again, giving us false hope.
Yeah.
She's sure you can do it, Emma. I mean, I'm not sure what exactly...
what I could do to
what
help
you could do.
along.
Like, it wasn't really your...
I was pleased one of them. One of them was like, you've been a champion. You've
Yeah.
been running up and down. That was a lovely lady.
At that point, I tried to have a little nap
I think
in
you
my
did
chair.
have a little nap.
Yeah, I also...
I think I even had a little bit of a nap
Yeah, I
while I
think
was...
you Yeah.
It was a very odd nap, because,
Yeah. At that point, it was good because you were out of pain. So you got back on your phone and were like talking to
Yes.
family and stuff again.
could
So
actually message a little bit.
we were a bit more positive and doing okay.
And the great thing about epidural is also I could no longer feel my rash, which for the first time in a long time didn't feel itchy. So I was like, oh, this is so nice.
Yeah.
Feel almost like a normal human being.
I also had great pleasure I swapped out my disposable mask I was wearing
Oh, yeah.
for one of those visors.
Yes.
Which I wasn't sure if I was meant to do or not, but no one complained about
No.
it. So I was
and you'd
like,
been there a long time.
the back of my ears were like beginning to really rub and hurt because
Yeah.
I've been wearing one of those like cheap masks for like 24 hours and ugh.
Which, I mean, it does make me feel for the staff because they had to wear
Yeah.
their masks the whole
Definitely
time.
the whole experience did make me
Yeah.
think I was really like sorry, but also amazed by like the hospital workers during COVID
that they could wear that all day.
Yeah.
And just, yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, I didn't have to because, you know, giving birth, they don't force you to wear a mask, which was quite nice.
And things were moving in the right direction then. So, again, 9 a.m., so not masses of time later, I put that you were 7 centimetres dilated, so it seemed to be working. And then we were just waiting around again, really.
This is when they kept saying in 3 hours.
Yeah.
And or 2 hours, and I kept believing them that it'd just be that many time and then we'd have the baby.
They'll check again at this time and see how we'd done, and they think she'll dilate this much over this time, so in a few hours we should be there. And then so midday passed and we were kind of, the progress was slowing, but you were still dilating,
and I was still quite happy on my drugs.
We're pretty sure we passed that 4-hour mark
yeah.
when they said you were going to get a C-section, but I think they thought because you were still making progress,
So, but you're so close.
well, we'll just keep going.
I think it got, was it 12 o'clock? At this point I just didn't believe anything anybody said, and they got to a point where I was just like, baby's never going to come out of me. They keep telling me in so many hours something will happen or they'll do something, and nothing is happening. Like, I know I'm making progress, but the baby's not here. Like...
The other thing I've put is that you didn't actually get much sleep at all, because you had lots of midwives like playing around with your monitors and measuring contractions and like adjusting the amount of stuff in your
drip. And
they
put stuff on Lily's head to check that
she was doing all right.
She was doing okay.
And that was a little bit infuriating as well, because basically Lily was doing fine.
Yeah. So they were like, oh, but the baby's fine. She's very happy.
So that didn't encourage them to take any action or treat it with any urgency. They're like, well, the baby's fine.
The baby's fine.
So we'll just keep going.
Yeah. Which, once again, at the time I was like, oh, well, that's a relief. I'm glad the baby's fine.
And it was really hot and sunny through this whole period, which meant it was
great for my sun allergy. But luckily I was inside that whole time.
But it was really hot inside.
It was.
Somehow all the rooms you ended up in, none of them had great windows or ventilation, or
everywhere had a fan.
Yeah, just a little fan, but it was so hot.
It was really hot.
But yeah, I wandered out and went and sat on the stray in Harrogate and had a drink and a snack and like spoke to my parents. And
at this point, he wasn't worried about missing the birth. I'm telling you that.
Yeah.
He knew nothing was happening.
Yeah, but I felt a bit guilty leaving you a bit, really.
Yeah, but I mean,
I got to keep my stamina up. Not that I was doing a lot.
No, but I felt it was nice for you. Like, I was sick of sitting in the room. You might as well have gone out for a little bit.
And again,
I know some people wouldn't like that, but
it doesn't feel like, it's like a bit over 24 hours, but somehow it felt like an eternity.
Yeah.
Goodness me. When you've been up all night, every hour you're going through a lot of pain and you're just worrying and stressing about it.
And people are prodding you all the time. Basically, like, can I look back down there again? You're like, yeah, sure.
So by 3 p.m, you were 9 centimetres dilated.
That's as far as I got.
That was as far as you got, but we were aiming for 10.
Yeah.
So we had to get, is this right? We had to get to maximum
maximum,
amount
because she was big.
Because she was big.
So they said if she'd been a smaller baby, I could have done it at 9. But she wasn't. So
Too big.
You're
too big. Causing all these problems. So then it all just happened in a rush. Just super fast. Suddenly.
Well, I think
another few hours passed and you were still at 9 centimetres and they were like, this has been going too long. Yeah. You're not progressing anymore.
Well, there was one doctor came in. I liked this doctor. She had seen me one other time.
Yeah.
And she checked and she was like, I think the way the baby is positioned, there's no way she can get any bigger.
Yeah.
And the way her head was, so she was like, there's just no way she's going to be able to give birth. Which at the time, I was like, could you not have determined that? Like,
this is very late
10 hours ago.
To be,
that would have been really helpful. But at the time, I was really relieved that she was saying, this isn't possible, we need to do something. Then you suddenly get a big form to fill out to say if they kill you. Basically, they're not responsible.
Yeah, you can't sue them.
Yeah. So I had to sign that they could take basically all my whole ovaries out if they needed to. I signed away all my rights, basically.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like, I would have signed anything anybody put in front of me because I was sick of giving birth. Like, they could have said...
You were not in a state to make that judgment call. You're high on drugs. It does seem... I know it's you and your body, and I know no one else can make the decision for you, but it does seem crazy in that sense.
And I would have gone with the C-section anyway. It felt like they didn't have much confidence in their abilities with all the forms they were giving me, which I know is normal. They give you all these forms. It does unnerve you
And not
slightly.
to point it out too much, but if you listen to our episode with Becky on French parenting, which is one of our most popular podcast episodes. So thanks, Becky, for joining us on that one.
Yeah.
You talk a little bit in that one about the differences in giving birth between France and England. And over there, they don't have to sign anything.
They don't have to sign anything.
They don't have to sign a thing for epidurals, don't have to sign a thing for C-sections.
Yeah, if they make a problem, you can...
Because they're confident in their technology, their abilities.
Yeah.
They do it all the time.
A lot more, yeah.
Just...
So, yeah, it does seem crazy. We do have to sign away a lot of things.
I mean, again, like we said at the beginning, we like the NHS. We're not trying to bash them for no reason, but it is broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know some people probably could have been at the same hospital at a much nicer time.
Yeah.
But with our case, it
And the people, most of the people were really good with us
were.
and like did the best they could. And
I just felt like nobody seemed to be in charge. Like nobody was willing to make the call that I should have a C-section earlier.
And it felt like a lot of those calls they were making were based on saving money, not on what was best for you. So like the fact they tried to not get us to have an epidural, the fact they held off from giving us a C-section.
I think the problem with the epidural is they only have a certain amount of anaesthetists.
Oh, yeah.
So I think at one point, because one of them said to me, oh, well, he's doing something else right now. So clearly poor Mohammed was like one of the only ones available.
Yeah.
And he just wasn't available.
Yeah.
So I think part of it was just they didn't have anyone to do it was part of the problem. So I don't even know if a lot of it was cost saving and just staff levels that they just didn't have the right amount of people to give you that
we were
choice.
During COVID as well. So it's important to recognise they were stretched beyond their limit because of that situation.
That's what I mean.
As well.
I think a lot of people were doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
So they just didn't have people to do all those jobs.
Yeah. So we were rushed in for an emergency C-section because they determined that you won't be able to give birth.
Yeah.
We need to get the baby out.
At this
now.
point,
It's
Elliot
been
was
too long.
furious.
I was like, do you not remember at the beginning of this process, we said to you, what happens if the baby's too big and Emma can't give birth to it?
Should we consider a
Could we not talk at the beginning about a
C-section?
C-section?
Yeah.
And just have a plan for that?
Yeah.
And they were like, no.
Don't even think about that.
That's silly. No.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what do you think I've been telling you this whole time?
And you also had to fight at this point because I'd been told earlier on in my pregnancy I had quite a large cyst. They said, if you're going for a C-section, make sure, and the woman said to us at the time, they will not listen to you because they will not have read your notes. So no matter what they say, you tell them your cyst needs to come out because she said if not, you're going to have an operation later and I can't give you 2 operations that close together. Yeah.
So at this point, it would,
laid on Elliot.
If you've been through this process, it's kind of just all go. I remember thinking at the time, this is such like watching like a medical drama. Like it felt like with people rushing in their scrubs and like suddenly I had to get dressed in like scrubs
But he was really good. He was like going, she has a cyst.
Yeah, I said like she's got a cyst it's on a left ovary. You have to take it out whilst you're doing the C-section.
They just didn't believe you.
They were like, he's a stupid man. Of course he didn't know what's going on.
But then I was like, why would
and
you
then
mention it?
they were like, it's an emergency C-section. We're not doing another procedure. And I get what they mean. They're like, what are you talking about? This is, we got to get the baby out. And I was like, no, read her notes.
He kept saying, read the notes. So finally somebody read my notes and they went, oh yeah, we do have to do that.
The man was right.
But like, thank God, because I would have just gone, fine, I want the baby out, do whatever.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because the woman had said, they will not believe you.
Yeah.
You need to tell them.
Unfortunately, a lot of our experience of this whole story was fighting with people over stuff to try and get the care we needed.
Yeah.
And I remember you'd made me a little notebook.
I'd made a notebook. This had my blood type, where the cyst was.
Yeah.
Some of the things my sisters had been allergic to when they'd given birth.
Yeah, so this was another fight I had with them at this point. So
because they said, if you get an infection, I can't remember what it was they were going to give me, but some kind of drug thing.
It's a type of biotic, I think, that they often give women if they've torn or something. Maybe I'm not quite sure.
Basically, you've had some kind of risk of infection.
Yeah. And so at the same time I was saying about the cyst, I then also was like,
reading out his book.
By the way, just a reminder, you cannot give Emma this drug because her identical sisters are allergic to it, and they were given it when they gave birth and had horrific reactions to it. This as well, they didn't believe me about.
They just kept saying, but she hasn't had a reaction. And Elliot was
it's not in your medical notes. It was her sister's.
And he kept going, but they're identical.
They're identical.
Like, fair enough, if only one of them had it, both of them.
You were a bit out of it, but you were, at that point, kind of looking at me like, don't fight and annoy the people that are about to cut me open.
They're going to cut me up. Just let them cut me up. Don't argue with them. And I got what he was saying.
Yeah.
He was just very annoyed, and I was like, just let him get her out. I just can't.
But it was all good in the end.
It was.
They did everything they were meant to do.
Yeah.
They took everything on board. It did amuse me though that even in the operating theatre, a few moments later, there was, I don't know who all the people were, but like there was this lady that was like calling out key information to the surgeon guy that had come in. And one of the things she said was like a supposed kind of allergy to this thing. And I was looking at him like, yes, you didn't have to put that word, the supposed, in there.
Come on, Elliot, like, really? You could have said suspected.
I can't remember the exact word.
I think suspected's fine. It's not technically proven.
I was just like...
He was annoyed,
just rolling my eyes like, fine.
Don't believe me.
And then it's fairly straightforward from there. I was amazed. This is the first time we've experienced a C-section, of course. So I no idea what to expect. I was very worried that I was going to be very squeamish.
Yeah. Well, I was worried he was going to faint or something. Which I know shouldn't have been. They kept saying, you seem really calm. And I remember at the time being like, I just want my baby out. Like, I don't really see any reason to panic at this point.
I mean, this is the point where, I mean, what do you remember from this point onwards? Because you were then very topped up on the epidural.
I remember, one of the things I remember is I was really annoyed that they'd almost, because I had the thing in my hand giving me fluids.
What was the drip thing?
The drip thing.
It was in a needle going in through,
and I remember
like,
they
your
had
knuckle.
to pick me up off the normal bed and put me in the operating table. And I remember they'd basically pulled the drip out of my hand.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember at the time saying, hey, don't pull. But they still did. At the time, I know they have to move on because it's complicated. But I remember thinking, I'm currently on an epidural. I won't feel that. But tomorrow, that's going to be so painful because you've just tugged it out of my arm. Well, my hand. Which is a weird memory to have. But I remember at the time being concerned, tomorrow when I have a baby, I'm going to have a really bad hand. Which is a weird thing to be concerned about.
But you did.
I did. It was terribly bruised.
Yeah, and painful.
I remember at the time, which shouldn't have been a worry, my main worry was like, please don't, like, fair enough, they'd taken it out, but because they'd been tugging me from something it had been pulled out. I remember being really concerned about that for some reason. Just
interesting to see what your recollection of it all, because I feel like a lot of people often, they turn to you as the woman and talk about childbirth as it. I know it, like, people know it's a painful and traumatic time, but also as if it's a magical time, especially with your first child.
But also I don't remember a lot. Like,
that's what I mean. Like, I always find it interesting. I end up talking about our childbirth more because I was sat there in the operating room observing this all.
Whereas it was all kind of a blur. Like, I was aware they were cutting me open because you can't feel them cutting open. You can feel your body like very violently being rocked side to side.
Bizarre.
Yeah. So I knew stuff was happening.
Yeah.
And I remember I kept thinking, because they said they could, if it goes wrong, they could take an ovary or both ovaries out. And I kept thinking, well, at least as they're taking them both out, I've had one child. I kept trying to be positive and being like, you know what? This is a terrible experience. If just a baby comes out, I'll be happy. I kept just thinking, I'll be really glad when I can hear something. And I was trying to listen to hear what they were saying to each other sounded like it was all going well.
Yeah.
But at the time, I don't think I was too worried. As in, it sounds weird, but I wasn't very worried that it was going to go horrifically wrong. I don't know why. I think I was just really relieved they were being proactive at that point.
Yeah.
So I was almost listening to be like, oh, I wonder how far they've got. I wonder if they've got to her yet.
We have a lot of trust in medical professionals.
We do.
I was very confident in the surgeon that they knew what they were doing.
And I was just kind of, I think this is when a lot of the nurses kept saying, you seem really calm. Are you not scared? And in my head, I was like, not in a weird way, I have bigger things to worry about. Like, My biggest worry at the minute is getting her out. I don't really have concerns about being cut open because from the original point, we actually would have preferred that.
A couple of things that surprised me was, but there wasn't like a proper screen around you or shielding you. So they just like hooked your hospital gown over like a little thing that hung over your bed, so that it was
so I just couldn't see anything,
shielding your head as you were lying down from being able to see down below your neck. For me, there was nothing for me, so I could see this funny little makeshift screen they'd made around your head. But then I could also see the rest of your body and all the people crowding around cutting you open. So it was a bizarre experience. I didn't assume that I would see anything, but actually kind of, you know, a lot of people obscuring what's going on, but I could kind of see what they were up to. We didn't really have an idea of how well things were going until the baby just suddenly appeared and you could hear her crying.
I remember her crying. I was so relieved. I was like, oh, thank God she's out.
And then, you know, one of the different things about having an emergency C-section like that, I suppose a scheduled C-section as well, I don't know, but as a dad, I'm the first one to see her and hold her, and well, I think
which was nice for you.
They did try to show her to you. They kind of like popped her over the screen, like, "Here's your baby. We're gonna just go."
I never saw her at that point.
I did find it amused me, just like kind of just pop her head over, like, "Here's the baby. It's here."
I remember hearing her cry and being very relieved, and I could have cried, but at the same time, I remembered I had more surgery to undergo. So I was like, "Great, the baby's out. Now they've got to do something else." So I better
then
just
they were
stay
focused
still.
on you. So I went over because I've been sitting on a chair in the corner.
What was nice, they did let him take his camera in, like your phone, and take pictures. Where I know some are quite strict.
I've heard others don't allow that, but
my sister,
I could take pictures.
In Darlington, her husband wasn't allowed to take any pictures.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So I went over, and as they weighed her and stuff, and got to see her, and then I got to hold her. And I just sat there holding Lily, you know, very magical time, really, while you were then still on the
operating table.
And I remember talking to the midwife or whoever they were, the people there.
One of the people.
Being like, is Emma okay? Like, is it going well? Because at this point then, you know, I was contented that Lily was well, safe, you know, good. She'd been delivered.
And she looked big.
Yeah. I remember, again, one of them saying, like, she's big. You definitely needed a C-section. And in my head I was going, thank you. Yes, of course. It wasn't like, oh, she was just too big. She was like, to the people cutting you open, she was like, obviously too big. But anyway, not that I'm
got a sore point about it.
So I was very worried that something would go wrong with them, like sorting the rest of you out.
Fear throughout the whole of my pregnancy is that I would die.
I had this irrational thing, like, I have no idea where it stems from, that I just was worried that you would die in childbirth and I'd be left with a baby and you'd be gone. And
this is it. He's always told me it's been his biggest fear that I just die.
But they reassured me that it was all going well, and
I remember Elliot said she looked very, really like kindly at him. He said he must have looked very worried when he said it, because she looked so kind of full of like, it's okay, it's all going well.
What I do remember is because I'd got up from my chair and I was over with the baby by when they were weighing her, and at that point I like turned around holding Lily, I think, and I was on the other side of the screen, this funny makeshift screen. And so I had just an open view of you laid there with your stomach just open. It was like very fleeting, so I can't remember a lot of detail.
No.
But it was just a really weird experience to see you laying there just cut open and seeing like inside you, just very, very odd.
Very odd.
Very odd. And then that brings us to it. So
well.
Brought out back to our room where we were before.
Yeah. Did I get to hold her at that point?
Yeah.
Yes.
The main photo we have that I think we shared to announce the birth was whilst you were still in the theatre, and I came and like held Lily by your head.
That was
and
nice.
you and her like snuggled your little heads together.
Our little heads, and like, hello.
There's obviously then lots of stuff after the birth, which we can skim through very quickly. It's not really the focus of this episode, but you were then moved to the private ward, which was
Yeah.
women only, and so I was sent home.
Sent away.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's when I was laid out and I couldn't move, and I had a catheter in.
Yeah.
And I remember Lily did a poo explosion,
Mm.
and I had to ring my bell, and they were like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "She's had a poo explosion, and I can't really. I can only move the upper half of my body, and I can't get to her. But I know there's been a poo explosion." And I remember they had to go and like they were really apologetic because they were going, "Oh, I'm so sorry, she's ruined her outfit." And I was like, "Just throw it away. Just I don't care about this point. Just do whatever." But they were good at that point till the next woman. I said, "I'm really thirsty. Can I have a drink?" And she said, "Why don't you walk and get yourself a drink?" And I was so mad because I was like, "Can you not see I can't move the lower half of my body?"
I had a strange experience of being back home alone.
Oh, yeah, by
so
yourself.
I was like, I've got a daughter, but I'm in my house alone. I mean, I did get to sleep during the night, though, which was a huge blessing. Whereas you, again, had a pretty much sleepless night. So like day 2 of not sleeping. I don't know, I'm losing track.
I don't know.
We had another day and a half in hospital for you before you could come home.
I think they were going to keep me in longer, but once again, they'd run out of room. But I was glad to get home. I really I despised being in the hospital because you're with like 6 other people. Everybody's baby's crying. So you constantly never know if it's your own baby or somebody else's baby. So you get no sleep. And just you have no privacy. I didn't even have a window or a fan. I just was sat in like a dark little bit. I remember thinking, idolising the other women at the top of the thing. This makes you bitter. Makes you not like them. That they had a window at the top of the room. And I kept thinking, oh, I'd love a window in my bit of the room. That'd be nice.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us to the end of the story. I mean, it leads very nicely into, we did another previous episode. We're kind of joining all the dots with this.
And like our first weeks.
Surviving the first week with a baby. If you go and look that up, I think it's called Newborns.
Yeah.
And that kind of takes on the story from this point onwards.
Yeah. It's a bit more pleasant. I think like this is a bit of a downer. But the good thing is, we all survived.
All healthy.
And actually, the surgeon did a really good job. I recovered very quickly, actually.
Yeah.
All things considered,
really
from my
good
C-section.
They stitched you up very well. Like
we had no complications or anything like that.
Couldn't ask for better, really.
I had no infections.
Yeah.
All things considered,
yeah,
I recovered very well.
Do you want to share some of the things people have sent us?
So everybody's in very mixed births. Oh, I will say it's interesting. A lot of people have had like tearing or episiotomies.
Mm-hmm.
And I always find it funny that when the midwife talks about them, they go, "Oh, but they're so rare." And I always want to go, nearly everyone I know who hasn't had a C-section has had tearing or an episiotomy.
It's also surprising how many people we bump into who have had C-sections or even had similar journeys to us with like induction followed by emergency C-section.
Yeah, very similar. I thought one of our listeners, Tim, was very interesting because he was very like you. So he had a fear of needles. So he had to like get out the room when they were doing it. And then Anna made me feel better about, when we try and have another one, that she had an elective C-section the second time round after her horrible traumatic emergency section the first time. And it was really delightful and smooth, very calm. And they're out very quickly.
We are looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Next time round, maybe that,
I now know this is a good hit for anyone. Legally within your rights, at any point you can ask for a C-section. It wasn't the law when we gave birth, but because there's been a bit of a scandal, there was a bit of a thing where too many women had died or babies had died because they weren't given C-sections quick enough. So now it is in the UK, you can just demand a C-section and you should be listened to or taken to another hospital that will fulfill what you want. So
it's good to know, isn't it?
Just so people know. And then Fran, she's going to be up in a future podcast episode, was saying she's had 3 and they've all been quite different births. The first one was 5 days of labour followed by an induction labour until 9 centimetres like us and then a C-section.
Yeah.
She's put 1 out of 10 would not recommend.
It's hard, isn't it? It can last so long. I mean, we didn't enjoy our experience, but I know people have it a lot
Yeah.
worse. So you were in like active labour for like 20 hours or so, but some
It
people
was getting towards 30 near the end, wasn't
could
it? But I didn't feel it.
go a
really.
lot longer.
And then her second baby, best one, she had 3.5 hours from first contraction till baby was in her arms, which sounds
That's
great.
incredible.
Only 40 minutes of actually pushing. She's put
Great.
6 out of 10, because obviously pretty intense, but done.
I like she's rated the different births
I like this
out
rating.
of 10. It's good.
I think I agree with her first rating. I think ours would have been 1 out of 10.
Is that,
I might have
how
given,
you rate it?
I might give them a 2 because I think the surgery went very well. But the overall experience, I would say,
Yeah.
was pretty poor.
Experience-wise, I think as you talk to more and more people and mums and hear experiences of people, you realise there's always going to be people that had a worse time. So in that
Yeah.
sense, I never feel like I can justifiably claim
like
to have
a 1.
a 1 out of 10. But it did feel like that at
Yeah.
the time.
And the third baby, 12 hours from first contraction, no room at the inn. Oh, God, that's stressful. So basically, they had to do a panicky trip to Leeds.
So change hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's stressful.
Yeah. I can't imagine going to hospital and going, you can't come here.
Yeah.
Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But then another person, Tara, put she was induced at 38 weeks and 5 days. She only had 2 paracetamol, so what a warrior. 47 minutes, 4 pushes.
That's incredible.
Incredible.
Love it. Wow.
I was just like, enjoyed the gas and air for stitches. That is good going, I would
Yeah.
say. With
Impressive.
nothing else, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
You can hear that's Lily shouting at Grandad. So yes, it was really interesting seeing other people's stories, because it is funny how many people I know who've been induced and had a C-section a lot of time later.
And we could keep talking about this for ages.
Yeah.
And it's a common topic that often
It
pops
is.
up when you're chatting with other mums and people. And, it's an experience, if you've got
Yeah.
kids, that we've all been through in various
Yeah.
capacities. So it's, a common thread. We'd love to hear your stories, or, if you have any comments on what we've shared.
Yeah.
This is just a kind of way to kickstart the conversation.
It is, yeah.
Well, we better wrap up the episode.
Yeah.
We're kind of getting to the end. I think it's going to end up being a longer episode than normal
Yeah.
because there's a lot to talk about. But thank you, everyone who's tuned in and
Yes,
joined us this
joined
week.
us.
Whether you're new or a long-term listener,
Yeah.
you're very welcome. It's been great having you with us on the beanbags here
Yeah.
in the, what did I say? Room of requirement, I
Room
think
of
I said at the beginning.
requirements, yeah.
There we go.
I'm actually sat on a beanbag too, so it fits for
There
me.
we go. Well, it's time to kick you out.
Yeah.
You're going to take that beanbag back. Get out. Get out the door. It's time to go. God bless. Sneak out your little one's room as they've gone to sleep. And remember,